Welcome to Saints Happy Hour podcast. We never skip a drink day.
Budrich wants to know how the doctor's doing.
That ended.
Now grab a drink and enjoy the show.
All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of Saints Happy Hour podcast. As always, we are brought to you by Hard Hide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. All right, so it's the off season, and I'll be honest, I only like to talk to one other team about the NFC South, and that's Atlanta. So I got my buddy Dave Choate from the Falcoholic. You know where to find him on Twitter and social media and all. They do a great job of talking about the Falcons, covering them. Dave, I don't care about Carolina. I don't care about Tampa. I just don't. Like they're not important to me. They're not rivals. And I wanted to talk to you especially because I feel like Atlanta has had a really interesting offseason. And I feel like me and you were talking about it right before we started recording. I feel like everybody not Tampa in the NFC South, we're all telling ourselves the same lies. We're like, our quarterback is going to be good, even though we really don't have that much evidence or any evidence at all to prove that he's good. And we're going to be better, and we're going to be able to compete in this horrible division. Atlanta, we got to start with the trade in the draft. That's where I think the starting point for you guys went. How are you guys feeling after the trade? And sort of now that the offseason's kind of wrapped up, you know, the teams have done their moves. You might do one or two things in the summer, but it's mostly wrapped up. So how are you feeling now that you've had time to digest the trade and sort of what it means?
Yeah, so, you know, there's been two big Falcons trades, draft day trades in the last 15 years. I'm not counting like Tack McKinley or anything like that. So a lot of little trades, but you know, the two that I look at is Julio Jones. Mm-hmm. And, you know, just like with Julio, they gave up a lot, probably a lot more than I think people expected them to, were comfortable with. And James Pierce has to be great to justify it. If he turns out to be the kind of pass rusher the team has been missing forever, nobody's really going to care about the price down the road. Like you can't even name most of the picks and players that were traded for Julio anymore.
No, you don't care. Like,
no, whatever, you know,
you're paid more for Julio. Like,
oh, absolutely. Had we known, right? And then the other one that's like a direct parallel, and our guy Alan Stirk just wrote about this. You know, in 2019, they actually did the same thing, but with the offensive line. They drafted a guy at 14. So right around that was Chris Lindstrom, who turned out to be great. Hopefully Jalen Walker's that good. And then they traded up to the end of the first round to get another guy, which was Caleb McGarry. And, you know, regardless of your opinions on Caleb McGarry, like he's not a high-end right tackle per se, but after the first rough couple of years, he's turned into a pretty good starter for, you know, the long haul. So I think if we're somewhere between those two poles, if James Pierce is a quality starter or if he's great, we end up happy with it down the line. The risk, of course, is that he's not. He's a one-trick pony. He's not the guy he's supposed to be. I think we're more excited than nervous at this point. But, you know, that's because nothing's on the field yet, right?
Yeah. The thing with the Falcons that's interesting, with the trade, it was funny to me afterwards that, like, we talked to his mom yesterday, and he's totally reformed. He's on the path. I was like, man, if the Saints had done that, the Falcons fans would be killing us. My thing with this trade, I actually like both of these players. And Pierce, yes, he's a knucklehead, but you see it. And Walker's going to be great. My thing with Atlanta is like, you got one of them. Like, you got Walker that he was thought, maybe the rumor wasn't New England might pick him at 4. Carolina might pick him at 8. Like, you got him and he fell to you, and like, you got your pass rusher, and you got this. You picked another. You traded a first round pick next year for a guy who's very similar. Like, they're these small speed pass rushers. I didn't quite understand why you needed both of them. And my thing with Atlanta is, I see the vision, but and you can tell me if you think I'm crazy. I think Atlanta looks at their offense as like, our offense. We love Penix. We're going to be even better on offense. And we're going to be playing from ahead. So we're going to be able to pass rush people. We're going to be able to move these dudes around, and we're going to be playing from ahead, and we're going to kill teams. But, man, if y'all get into mud fights and it's close, I feel like your defense stinks and it's not big enough, and Onyemata is cooked, and JD Jarrett is gone. And I would be worried, if I was a Falcon fan, I would be worried that teams are going to shove us around in games where we're not ahead.
Yeah. It's a fair concern. We're already worried about the run defense.
Mm-hmm.
You look at it and you're really looking at, Rook in his second year. You're looking at a couple of guys up front like that. Onyemata, if he's not completely cooked. Caden Ellis, at the second level, and then hopefully your safety group is pretty good against the run. I do like Xavier Watts, the rookie there, but it's not a defense built to stop that. And that is the trend line, as the Falcons well know, because they're using Bijan a ton. So I share that concern almost exactly. Like, I think the offense is good enough. And I think they looked at last year and they were like, we were a playoff team, if not for Kirk Cousins completely falling apart for a month, which is fair. It's a fair take on it, even with the defense being what it is. But on those days when Penix doesn't have it, on those days where the other defense is good, and you do have to get down in the muck and push guys around, that is right now their weakness. And I don't know that there's anything out there that's going to solve that between now and September.
Before we get to Kirk Cousins and the offense, I have this weird thing with the Falcons. I look at them and it almost feels like they're doing what the Saints did in 2022 and 2023, where they're rushing to do all these things to win the South, where I get why the Saints were doing it, because their team was old, and we were like, we got to squeeze one more year out of this. Sean Payton's going, we got to get these dudes before they get in the home. We got to figure it out one more time, and they're getting Carr and they're doing all that stuff. For y'all, I don't understand quite the rush to do all this and like trade a first round pick for 2026 and do it. It feels rushed. Like, does it feel rushed to you in a sense of, why are we pushing everything to the middle now? Why can't we just, Penix is going to be his first year starter. It feels rushed to me.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of Mickey Loomis that's rubbed off on Terry Fontenot, which is not something I like saying out loud, where there's the aggression is always there, the sense that they're going to do this, they're this close, they just need this piece. And I think last year, rather than discouraging them, encouraged them, because the defense was garbage for the first half of the year. Cousins was terrible for a month. Raheem Morris made a couple of mistakes that, God help me if he makes them again, in games. Younghoe Koo was like the sixth worst kicker in football last year. That's right.
Like, he made the kicks against the Saints in the Georgia Dome and then completely fell apart.
So they're looking at all this and they're saying, we were that close. We totally can do this. And, it's been 7 straight years of losing. We're sick of losing. The fan base is sick of losing. We got to do something about it. So I see the urgency from that standpoint. But the risk when you do that is every year is different. You're not, Arthur Smith thought the same thing. He's like, I just need a Bijan. And then he couldn't figure out really how to use Bijan. And we just need to surround Desmond Ridder with all these pieces and he's going to be fine. Or, there was always these stories that they've been telling themselves for 7 straight years, and it's never amounted to anything. And so while I see the moment, and I do think you can talk yourself into this being the right moment, they've taken away any margin for error by continually doing that, right?
And this is a question for maybe both of us. Is the NFC South, is being in the NFC South, is it a blessing and a curse? It's a blessing because we go into every year, even the Saints, they're potentially one of the teams that's picking first last year, if I'm being honest, right? It could go wrong again. Chuck could be Will Levis 2.0, and they could pick first, and y'all could be making fun of us. But there's a scenario where we're like, if this happens and that happens, and we get to 7 and 8, we can win the South come the Fast 3 League. So
100%,
it's a blessing because there's always real hope, but it's a curse because there's always real hope and you're not patient enough to build. Whereas if you were in a real division like the NFC East or the AFC West, you'd be like, hey, this is 2-3 year process. We'll get this thing ready to roll in 2026, 2027. We're not competing with the Chiefs. We're not competing with the Chargers. But in the NFC South, you're like, we're 2 moves away, baby. We're just 2 moves away from competing.
100%. And I think part of the problem is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? They have a ton of talent, but they have a coach, they have a coach that makes some poor decisions at times. Like that's true of every coach in this division, even the new ones. I feel confident saying it ahead of time.
That's right.
Baker is a high variance guy. Their 2 biggest playmakers are old. Some of these guys on defense, so you look at them and you're like, they are vulnerable. And I think it's the same story every year. We tell ourselves they're vulnerable. We can go get them. Even the Panthers think that, They're like, we're almost there. and it does. I think it's more curse than blessing at this point to be in this division, because not only is it kind of the laughing stock division over the last several years after it was great through the 2010s, but there's a story that you can tell yourself. And even the Buccaneers are guilty of this too. It's like they're telling themselves they're a championship contender and they're not. They're a one and done, maybe the divisional round, playoff team every single year. So you're on this treadmill, and it's going to take these teams actually doing some long-term thinking to get out of where we're at. And I don't know that any of them have the capacity. Yeah.
But the thing is too, I look at Tampa and I'm like, Todd Bowles, the main reason you are still the Tampa Bay coach is because you hit a home run back-to-back times at offensive coordinator. Like, that's it. That's the only reason he's still the coach. Is he going to do it 3 years in a row, Dave? I mean,
I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah. Credit to him that he's done it twice. Like, that's not nothing. But it's a big ask.
So Raheem Morris, 1 year, listen, his clock management skills were a delight for Saints fans at times. But here's my question to you, and this is a semi-serious question. In year 1, he fired the defensive coordinator. And since he's a defensive guy, I feel like whatever side of the ball is your head coach, whatever side he's on, you get to do like one renovation. And that's it. Like, you can't, like, if you're a defensive guy and your defense is good and you're cycling through offensive coordinators, they'll maybe give you a cute few. But I feel like Raheem Morris, he fired the defensive coordinator after 1 year, and he's in very real danger of guys get to October and the fan base is like, why are you here? Like, your defense is terrible. Why are you here? And I think that's a real danger for him. Is he on a hotter seat than maybe a second-year coach normally would be?
I feel like that's probably true. And I got to be honest, I don't like that. And the reason I don't like that is I think Morris is a good coach. I think the game management and sometimes the way he communicates his decisions, it's not clear enough. And then people take it and they run with it. So I get that. And some of those last year were inexcusable for a coach who's been in the NFL as long as he has. However, they gave Dan Quinn like 3 extra years. They gave Arthur Smith that 3rd year, and then we're considering bringing him back for the 4th, even after everything that went wrong. So the fact that, like, after 1 year, Morris had limited, they had resources, they had cap space, but it's 1 year to renovate things, as you said.
Yeah.
He shouldn't be on the hot seat in the second year. Fontenot, yes, because he's been here for a while now, and this team can't get out of the mud. But to me, yes, he probably is, because this team is so sick of losing, because Arthur Blank is so sick of losing, because the defense didn't do well, because he had to fire Jimmy Lake. All of these things play into it. But is it really fair for him as a second-year coach to be on a hotter seat? No, I don't think so. So that's where the confidence that he's got in, we're going to get these pass rushers. We got Jeff Elbrick. He's an upgrade, which he obviously is. Jimmy Lake didn't know what he was doing. I don't think that's controversial to say. I think he'll probably be fine. But, if this team is really in the toilet in October, November, something goes wrong with Penix, I do think all bets are probably off at that point.
Listen, I feel like the Saints and Atlanta, I feel like we hate each other, but we're kind of kindred spirits. And like, we look at we look at each other and we're like, man, that is some, like when y'all did the prank call, when y'all had the prank call, it was amazing. And it was funny that he pretended to be Loomis, but there was a little part of me and I was like, that was Saintsy as shit. Like, I can't believe that happened. And I'm surprised the Saints weren't involved on this is crazy, but I'm used to it because I'm a Falcons fan. Where did the prank call and the fine and the whole drama of that, where did it rank in your experience as a Falcon fan on like the weirdness meter for the Falcons?
It was pretty weird. Yeah. Like it is, it's funny because Tampa Bay, they've won 2 Super Bowls now, so they've shed that reputation a little bit, but historically in that franchise, still, I think one of the worst winning percentages in football. The Panthers have had just god-awful owners all throughout. So they have more traditional incompetence and weirdness with them. And we are the weird franchises. The weird things happen to us. But even on a scale of that, if you really take a step back and you go, the new defensive coordinator's son, somehow getting this information, prank calling a prospect, and then like this huge blow up about it, like that's weird. That's really weird.
I'm going to video it. Like, I feel like the play for Ulbrich was to just be like, get on the mic and be like, I can't believe I raised a son that is so fucking stupid. Like, and it would have been mean, but I think everyone in America would have went, I feel you. Because that's like every parent's nightmare, right? Like, we try to raise these kids, we try to raise them right, and they just do dumb stuff. And it's like,
oh my God.
Like it's not his, like, he's like, I'm sorry. Like, I'd be like, it's not your fault. Like, I would have really liked that, but he didn't. But it was like, do you think it like, has it shortened the coaching staff and has it shortened his rope at all? Or is Atlanta just like, okay, we're past it and it's not a big deal? Or is it like something that they keep in his file and they're like, hey man, your defense is 23rd and it's November 1st.
Yeah, I think, at this point, now that he's here, Ulbrich will go when Morris goes. At the same time, like, yeah, it's such a weird situation. I'm going to go on a little bit of a mini rant here because, like, it's not Ulbrich's fault. I mean, it is in the sense that somehow that information got to his son. So there's some sort of carelessness here. But, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I agree with Mike Florio that I think the reason that the NFL came down so hard on Ulbrich is because they emailed this out to like 400 people across the league, right? So this could have happened to any coach, and they were like, well, we need to send a message. And it's always, the Falcons always get this message. They got the message with tampering last year, and then they changed the rules. But to me, it's not really his fault. But at the same time, like, yeah, the fact that this team has had so many public blowups and they've been the face of not going after Lamar Jackson, going after Deshaun Watson, crowd noise, tampering, now this, like, it works against him on some level, of course. Like, it can't help but do that. And even though it's his kid that did it and it's not him, and really the franchise has nothing to do with this. Like, again, if it was emailed by the league to everybody, I don't see what the Falcons were supposed to do besides go to his house and be like, close your laptop. It's just a really messed up situation, but I do think nobody comes out of it unscathed. And that does include the league, even though they're kind of scot-free. Nobody except Florio is really talking about it. But that if they tried that again next year, they're going to get prank calls again. So
yeah, and like, it was Shador. If it would have been like Devin Neal for the Saint, like, no one would care.
Yeah,
no,
100%. Yeah.
Kirk Cousins, I'm as surprised that he's still on you guys' roster as I was that Derek Carr retired and gave the Saints $30 million back. I'm surprised at both of those things. How surprised are you that he's still here and he's apparently going to be there for the 2025 season?
Yeah, I still, famous last words, I still don't expect him to be on this roster this season. Now, I don't know when he's going to get traded, who he's going to get traded to, but somebody's going to have an injury. Aaron Rodgers is finally going to back out on the Steelers, whatever it may be. I can't believe that's part of it too. Like the fact that that's still dragging on, like even if they had an idea that they were going to maybe go with Cousins instead, like they're waiting.
And by the way, Kirk Cousins, he is the perfect Steeler quarterback. He is the perfect Steeler quarterback to have them go 10-7, and we all bet against him on a Friday night on Amazon, and everybody wins money, and we're super happy. Like, he's the perfect Steeler quarterback. I don't know why they want Aaron Rodgers. Kirk Cousins is the quarterback meant for them, I feel like.
I think so too. And I think if you're Arthur Smith, and I mean, Omar Khan, the GM, he's safe. He should be safe, I think. But even Mike Tomlin, who I do think is a great coach, like this has gone on so long that they're just like a mid-tier, lower-tier playoff team, and they can't get the quarterback position right. I would not want to put my bet on Rodgers. I'd rather put it on Kirk Cousins. And I say that having watched Kirk Cousins completely fall apart last year the way he did. But I don't expect him to be on the roster. I think the Falcons, it's a small move in the scheme of things, but the fact that they went out and signed Easton Stick, who is a potential backup, he was behind Herbert. He's decent enough, tells me that they anticipate at some point they're still going to move him. Now, am I thrilled that he's still on the roster? Nothing against Kirk Cousins, no. I don't really want him on the roster. I really would like them to free up just a little bit of space now and going forward to make a couple more moves. But if he's here, he's not going to be thrilled with it. But I think the Falcons not getting baited into cutting him because everybody expected them to do it is a good thing, ultimately.
When I look at the Falcons, the two things that struck me the most in the offseason was, one, how they did nothing on offense, like almost nothing, like even to the two deep, like they just did nothing. Yeah. And to me, I like it because I'm a Saints fan, because you guys had, by any measure you want to measure it, different people do health. I know William Sharp and different sites do it. By any measure, Atlanta had incredible health on offense last year. And by one measure, they had the healthiest offensive season since the Rams won with Stafford. Yeah. That would really concern me if I was a Falcons fan, because injury health, I don't care what these teams do. I don't care, like the medical staff, whatever. And listen, the Saints fans, we make fun of the medical staff endlessly, and they deserve it. Yeah. But I feel like it's a lot of luck, because the Rams had like cured it, and then they went through back-to-back years where their team was just decimated with injuries, right? I would be really concerned about the fact they didn't do anything on offense, and you had fantastic injury luck. How are you guys feeling about the offense overall? Because Atlanta's defense, but the offense, how are you feeling about it?
Pretty good, but that is ultimately the same concern that I have, right? And I get made fun of a lot on the Falcoholic by readers, and I love you guys if you're watching this, but they're like, what is your obsession with wide receiver for? And they say that all the time. They're like, why do you care so much? We have great top three guys, and we have options. Well, my concern is that you get somebody hurt, like Darnell Mooney was at the end of last year, and then you have a unproven guy, or you have Kaderil Hodge, who I love, but is really more of a really good special teamer and occasionally useful receiver. What is the obsession with tight end 3? I don't know who that guy's going to be. Mm-hmm. What happens if Kyle Pitts get hurt? What happens if Charlie Warner gets hurt? Like, they have depth, especially if they have Cousins. They have depth at quarterback. They definitely have redundancies at running back, because you've got Tyler Algier. That's great. And your offensive line depth is pretty good. I'm a little concerned about center because Drew Dahlman's not here. But you look at those pass catchers, those positions, there's no proven depth. And I feel like, we're telling ourselves the same story we do every year, which is this undrafted guy is going to turn out to be a gem. And it almost never happens, right? So, yes, I think with the good health that they had a year ago, they're really well positioned to handle it if they get injuries at some positions, but there are others that could derail this whole thing. And I do worry about that. Your margin of error is not as thick as you like to think it is.
Yeah, I mean, the Saints in 2017 and 2018 and 2019, they were built like a tank. Like it didn't matter. Short of an asteroid, they were winning 10 games, right? Because they were so deep. But to your point, the Saints, great first 2 weeks. And then in the middle of the year, they signed Valdez-Scantling, and we made fun of it. We're like, he's not going to solve anything. And he kind of did, but he was just average. But we were happy to have him, and he scored a touchdown against you guys. So that's the thing. Yeah. I wish more analysts, when they would do predictions, would be like, hey, let's run an injury scenario on this team and walk through it and be like, because then if you walk through it, you'd be like, I don't know about that tackle. I don't know about that guard. I don't know about that linebacker. Everybody, when they do predictions, assumes health. I wish more smarter podcasts would go through and go through the two depths and run injury scenarios. Because I think it would give us a clearer picture there. Because there's a lot of teams, almost all of them are super vulnerable, right? There's a scenario where Atlanta, y'all are 12-5, and it's perfect, but it's like Jenga pieces because you're not stable and you just pull one out and it collapses, right?
Collapses. Yeah.
This is one of my favorite questions because I went back and watched the podcast that we did when the Falcons were starting Desmond Ridder, and I asked it to you. What is not the fun? I know the fun scenario for the Falcons is y'all go 12-5, 13-4, everything works out perfect. But what's the absolute chaos theory that you think could happen in the NFC South where it's either the same as it always was, or it's even more chaotic, more a laughing stock, and we're all getting – I'm having you on the podcast again in November, and we're both 5-7 or whatever, and this whole division is a giant clusterfuck. What's the scenario where you think the NFC South could be as stupid and laughable as it ever has been?
100% quarterback based, right? There's when you come down to it, there's a million other things that could go wrong. The Falcons defense could be terrible. Panthers secondary could just fall apart completely. Same thing with the Buccaneers, really. But I think it comes down to quarterbacks. I think if Penix struggles in his second year, gets hurt, if Baker Mayfield gets hurt, you guys, I don't even know what to say about your quarterback situation. It's a mess. Bryce Young, kind of falls flat again. If that unfolds, this could be not just the worst division in football, but this could be the ammunition the Lions need to push that rule change about the seeding for the playoffs through. If it doesn't make it through this year, to me, that's what it hinges on. It hinges on the quarterback position. You have potentially 3 teams with young quarterbacks, youngish, in some cases. And if they all hit, all of a sudden, this is a real dogfight of a division. And Tampa Bay is the one with a guy who's a little bit older and a little bit less certain. But all it takes is a couple of injuries and a couple of slide backs and, not meeting high expectations. And this is an abominable division.
I was thinking funny because Carolina, their owner's a crazy person. Just because he wasn't a crazy person last year doesn't mean you're type. He still is just as likely to be give us ESPN breaking news the second week of October.
100%.
But I wonder, I look at it. Listen, we always said Gail didn't care about the Saints, and apparently she was running Operation Fire DA in the shadows last year. No one knew it. And then it kind of broke Sunday night. Some of the reporters are like, she's been talking to people. She's very unhappy. And we were like, that's not true. And then Monday morning, they're like, oh my God, they fired DA. So not that they would do that to Kellen Moore, but I look at Arthur Blank and I'm like, would he do something rash if things, not that they would go bad, but if they start out bad and you look at that early schedule and it's, dicey a little bit, how How important is a good start? I'll put that to you, to Atlanta, for jobs, for everything. How important is a good start for the Falcons?
It's really important. I think at least like an average start to be like, this thing is headed in the right direction. I don't think blank. He just isn't going to be a guy who's going to fire Raheem Morris midseason.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to fire Terry Fontenot midseason. He'll wait until the end of the year. But, we saw it with Belichick. There was interest from blank that was rumored like in November. We saw that, he did finally let Dan Quinn and Thomas Dimitroff go in like week 5 in 2020. So I think it's really important because there's so much invested in this, right? You have a guy in Fontenot who's a 5th-year GM, hasn't put it together. You have a guy in Raheem Morris who has more pressure on him. And then you have Penix, who is the great hope. And if those things don't look like they're working, we're heading for an 8th straight losing season. Like, things will change. They won't necessarily change in week 4 or week 8. But I don't think Arthur Blank is going to get to the end of the season and go, let's run it all back again. Like, he's getting older. He really does care whether this team wins or not. And I know it eats him alive that they haven't in forever. So I think if you get off to a dismal start, you can't even match what you did a year ago, then that's a big problem.
I have to say, like, if you guys had hired Belichick and he had his muse at the games, Jordan, like, that would have been amazing. Like, it would have been amazing. Like, not for content, maybe not for y'all, but for everyone else, it would have been amazing. And I have to say, side note, Belichick becoming a crazy person and being dominated by like a 24-year-old girl/woman is just a plot twist that I couldn't, you couldn't even have conceived of it. That's one of the most wild things that I've ever seen. Like, he is maybe the greatest football coach of all time, and he's being led around by the nose from a 24-year-old. It's incredible. And y'all were that close to having that, Dave. That close.
It's so funny because I had a lot of conversations in the run up to that with people, around the organization, to certainly around the fan base. And the feeling was like, this can't happen. And the reason it couldn't happen was because he was going to blow everything with the franchise up. Yeah. And he was too old. And maybe, my feeling was he was getting set in his ways. Things weren't working in New England because of him, and I see a lot of Patriots games up here. So I was not enjoying that thought. But never in my wildest dreams did I think that, the third runner up in Miss Maine was going to be ruining his life, right. Come 2025. But we would be in a position where she or Belichick would have made a 28-3 joke, like laugh it off as the Falcons coach, and there would have been a riot. Like 100%, that's what that would happen. So we between that and Watson, like, for all the crazy, stupid, terrible things that have happened to this franchise over the last 10 years, they did dodge 2 huge bullets.
Dude,
so
we're doing a bracket tease for the people. We do a bracket every summer, and everybody always asks me, well, why do you do the bracket in the summer? Why don't you do it during the NCAA tournament? I'm like, during the NCAA tournament, I don't need content. I got free agency, right? I got news. Yeah. I got the draft. I don't need content. During the summer, I need content. We're doing a Mickey Loomis terrible ideas bracket. And Dave, let me tell you, Mickey Loomis, he's made some bad decisions that have happened, trading up with the Eagles and all that. But that man is blessed by God. He has dodged some incredible, I mean, the one thing that bonds Falcon and Saints fans is, I don't know how close y'all felt y'all were to Deshaun Watson.
Close.
But I know for a fact, I got a phone call and it was like, it's done. The Saints think they have it. And that was on Thursday. And it was like, I hate this. I love the Saints. I guess I'm just going to have to come to terms with it. And they dodged that bullet. And I can't imagine this, like the Saints or the Falcons with him and no draft picks, because your roster wouldn't be the same. You'd be in poverty, and you'd have this guy that everyone hates. Like that, to me, it's almost like you dodged not a nuclear, but like an existential event, like an extinction event.
100%. And we both did. right? Like we absolutely both did. And at the time, it felt like that when we thought he might be a good quarterback, just because everything around it. And it was very strange for the Falcons in particular because they had been so outspoken about avoiding that kind of guy. Kind of like it's the Ravens right now are talking about how they learned everything in the world from the Ray Rice situation, and then they drafted Mike Green, and
That's right.
we're trying to get away with Justin Tucker. So to me, we really did. That was the ultimate maybe stroke of luck that both of our franchises could have gone through, because either one of us could be in hell right now, like bottom of the division.
You'd be in hell, and you'd be like 3 years from even being anywhere, because your roster would be like, and Cleveland, it hasn't caught up to them. I mean, they were obviously terrible this past year, but their roster was really good when they got Deshaun. So they were like, we're going for it. We need a quarterback. So now all those bills of not having the picks are coming due. But I have to say, the only thing I'll say about the Deshaun Watson thing was I was 100% right. I was like, not that I didn't the off-field stuff, I said put that aside. He hasn't played quarterback in 2 years. You don't give up 3 firsts for a dude that hasn't played in 2 years. And everybody was like, well, Michael Vick did it in prison. I'm like, yeah, but Philadelphia, they didn't have to pay for Michael Vick. It was a flyer. If he would have not worked out, they could have just cut him and be done with him. So I was right about that. So the final thing before we get out of here is your prediction for the Falcons. Are they going to get over the hump this year? And what is a reasonable is expectations for the fans? Get to the playoffs. If we are one and done, I don't care. Just winning season, get to the playoffs. That is the goal. What is the absolute bare minimum fans expect of this team, and what do you expect of this team?
Yeah, I think the absolute bare minimum is a winning season, right? Like no more 7-10, no more 8-9. You got to at least go 9-8. God help us if we don't. And I think there is an expectation that the pieces here aren't going to gel enough for them to make a deep playoff run. I feel like a year ago when I thought maybe we could get the old Cousins, I was thinking, a playoff win was reasonable. This year, I'm backing my expectations up a little bit. I do expect a winning season. I had them down for a 10-7 record. Early season is a bit of a gauntlet, but things get a lot easier later in the year. They're playing like in a 5-week span. We play you guys, no offense, Panthers, Patriots, Jets, like just bad teams all right in a row. And the Saints obviously can win any time out. So that's a little different, but I do think they'll have a winning record. I think Penix is the real deal. That's a lot of my investment in this team is I think he's going to be that guy. But, if they don't at least get a winning season, like I'm not going to say there's going to be riots because nobody's, we're all too jaded at this point, but you're going to have a lot of people drop off for good.
What's your biggest fear for what's the thing, but besides Penix being injured or not good, because that's obvious.
Yeah.
What's your biggest fear about the 2025 Falcons that non-quarterback related, that you're going to be sitting there in November on the Falcoholic on Twitter and you're going to be like, God damn it, this is sinking our season, and it's not the freaking quarterback?
It's the reliance on the young guys on defense, right? So I think these are good players, but it's Jalen Walker, James Pierce, Billy Bowman, Xavier Watts, your second-year guys like Rook, Brandon Dorless. Are those guys going to be what they expect them to be? And if they're not, and it doesn't mean they're bad players, but, first, second-year guys who have barely played, if those guys aren't good, there isn't enough veteran talent on this team outside of a couple of guys to carry this defense, and they're going to get blown off the field. And if that happens and the pass rush doesn't materialize again and your run defense is terrible, which I'm kind of expecting, it doesn't really matter how good the offense is. You're going to lose some games you shouldn't. You're probably going to fall short of where you want to go. So that's definitely my biggest fear.
Well, Dave, thanks for joining us. I wish you nothing but the worst, as always.
Absolutely. Back at you.
But tell people how to find it, because the Falcoholic, tell people how to find it, because it's amazing. And you guys, of all the Falcon sites, you guys are the most fun. Like Falcon Reddit gets a little angry. Other places, they get a little angry. Falcoholic, y'all are really kind of chill about everything with the Falcons. Tell people how to find you.
Yeah, we're at thefalcoholic.com, where I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky. I run the accounts there. We're all over the place elsewhere, but maybe not as active. And you can also find our own live show with Kevin Knight, who runs it on our side, every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. So we're talking all things training camp, season predictions, angst about all of the things that we just discussed. So you can find us there.
So thanks, Scott. Thanks, Dave. And thank you guys for listening. Thanks for supporting the show. Go to patreon.com/Saints Happy Hour. Check us out. And until next time, the bar is closed.